Shalom, 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 Israel. This is Captain Paul Israel from Kingdom Builders of Israel LLC, and today's class lesson is going to be on marriage according to the Bible, part 3. Again, Israel, today's class topic is going to be on marriage according to the Bible, part 3. Okay, so this is going to be a good lesson to discuss. Okay, Israel, so get out your pen and notepad. Okay, because this Part 3 lesson of the marriage according to the Bible understanding is going to be getting into the righteous marriage order in the kingdom. So this is the right understanding that we as the children of Israel need to have in these last days. Okay, so this is the understanding that I'm going to give out on the correct understanding of the breakdown on marriage according to the Bible. Okay, in its completion understanding. Okay, so when we look at this particular slide right here, it says righteous marriage order in the kingdom. Okay, so this is the subject matter under the umbrella of marriage according to the Bible, part 3 lesson. Okay, so this is the right understanding that we need to learn. Okay, so we go to the next slide. We're going to get into the understanding of marriage laws pertaining to having more than one wife. Okay, so this is the marriage law understanding pertaining to if a Hebrew man wants to have more than one wife. Okay, so this is the understanding what I'm dishing out right here, and I'm going to explain the understanding of this concept and why I'm bringing out the marriage laws pertaining to having more than one wife. Okay, so this is the book of Exodus chapter 21 verse 10 on this first understanding that I'm going to bring out, and then the other verse I'm going to bring out is from the book of Deuteronomy chapter 17 verse 17 understanding. Now, of course, in general, right, when it says marriage laws pertaining to having more than one wife, Moses was given the commandments of this understanding when the children of Israel was not in captivity anymore under the Egyptians. So Moses was giving the Israelites a particular commandment pertaining to marriage laws pertaining to having more than one wife when the children of Israel was no longer under bondage. So the Hebrew Israelites was free. They was not in captivity. Notice the understanding of more than one wife laws being implemented in the commandments under the Mosaic laws of understanding. Okay, the children of Israel were no longer in captivity because we have Hebrew Israelites in today's time in captivity. Under the Gentile nations, right? And they'll be pushing multiple wives doctrine. Okay, but as you can see, this law or these laws was implemented and given to the children of Israel when they got out of bondage from the Egyptians. So Moses was given the Hebrew Israelites the understanding of more than one wife marriage law understanding when the Hebrew Israelites were in that wilderness. Okay, they was no longer slaves to the Egyptians. Okay, so we're going to start out in the book of Exodus chapter 21 verse 10. It says, if he take him another wife, her food, her raiment, and her duty of marriage shall he not diminish. So you see this, Israel? So Moses commanded the men of Israel, if they take on another wife, right, that means the men are supposed to be what? Being able to provide for that second wife's food. The men are supposed to be providing for that second wife's clothing. The men of Israel are supposed to be providing for that second wife duty for marriage, meaning he's supposed to have things set up for this second wife to be able to do her duty for marriage. Okay, things supposed to be set up. And it says, shall he not diminish? So the men were commanded to have an equivalency of understanding of providing for the second wife the same way as he's supposed to be catering to his first wife as far as being that provider. Okay, and notice the men of Israel were only able to do this in completion of understanding when they was no longer in captivity circumstances. Okay, because the Hebrew Israelites was free. They wasn't in captivity. They wasn't in a bondage situation where the men were struggling to pay for bills or the men were struggling to survive. No, they was free at this point. So they was able to handle a certain circumstance of having more than one wife. Okay. But you'll have in modern day times, Hebrew Israelites, they're just quoting this verse and then justifying them just picking random women out here and saying, okay, now I can have multiple wives because the law says I can have more than one wife. I can take on another wife. So again, they're not breaking down the understanding when it is appropriate to have another wife. So you're supposed to have another wife theoretically when you are no longer under bondage under the Gentile nations. Okay. So if anybody is just constantly pushing multiple wives doctrine, right, they're going off.
It does speak clearly that Abraham, the father of the faith, he had wives and concubines. Jacob had 4 wives, out of which come the 12 tribes of Israel. Moses, the custodian of the law, had 3 wives. David, the king of Israel, had 18 between wives and concubines. Of course, we all know about Solomon. But it actually has laws written in the Torah, written in the law of Yah, that actually regulates and sanctions a man having more than one wife if he chooses to.
Okay, as you can see in the law, we was given this law when we got out of bondage. Okay. Deuteronomy chapter 17 verse 17. It says, neither shall he multiply wives to himself, that his heart turn not away. Neither shall he greatly multiply himself silver and gold. Whoa, wait a minute. You see this, Israel? You see this? See this, Israel? You see this particular law pertaining to when a man has more than one wife, right? The Most High commanded Moses to tell and instruct the men of Israel not to just be randomly just picking random women out here just to make them their wives. You have to do things decently and in order. So if a Hebrew man is out here just picking multiple women to say that that's their wives, they're operating after lust, okay, which is against the laws of the Most High. As you can see, it says, neither shall he multiply wives to himself. So you're not supposed to be just randomly multiplying wives to yourself, especially if you cannot fulfill what we just read in the book of Exodus chapter 21 verse 10, meaning you have to provide that same equal of providing certain things to this woman, the same way you do your first wife. So a lot of these Hebrew Israelites are not even able to take care of these wives in that certain manner because you have to be rich and wealthy to do so. Okay, the modern Hebrew Israelites of today are not rich and wealthy to have multiple wives. And then most of the time, these men, majority times, are battling with lust.
It might start off as interest, meaning like they want to get the understanding, and the next thing you know, Cap. I mean, nobody knows how many wives I got. Sly. That's like the biggest mystery on the earth right now. Like, how many do Cap have?
Or they're battling with pornography. Because the modern Hebrew Israelites are supposed to be doing what? Learning these laws, statutes, and commandments. They're supposed to be focused on the word. They're supposed to be catering to one wife, not multiple wives. Okay, because the multiple wives understanding is for the kingdom of heaven on earth understanding, when the Israelites are going to be put in rulership position to be able to govern over those wives. Okay, right now the Hebrew Israelites are in captivity under the Gentile nations. So these men of Israel are operating solely on their lust when they're just trying to multiply wives. Okay. It says, neither shall he greatly multiply to himself silver and gold. So it's not saying that men of Israel can't have silver and gold. It's just applying that you just cannot focus just primarily on having gold and silver over Yahweh's righteousness, because we do know how the men of the world are operating. Like, you know, they are catered to gold and silver, or their gold necklace, or their gold chain, or their gold watch, or their silver watch or silver chain, right? They be focusing all on the jewelry, right? They're not focusing on Yahweh's commandments. So that's how a person's heart can be turned away from the Most High, when they're focusing on material gain over Yahweh's righteousness. And that's what we have with the Hebrew brothers when they're focusing primarily on the multiple wives analogy, and they don't focus on Yahweh's commandments. Because a lot of these brothers that always constantly push about multiple wives, they don't know about Yahweh's commandments like that. Okay? So that's why they push so heavily on multiple wives, because they don't really grasp the concept of Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments. So again, we are commanded as men of Israel not to be focusing on multiplying the wives unto ourselves. This is what the law says in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 17. And especially we are in captivity understanding. Okay. As you can see, we are in captivity circumstances. So we don't need to be in Babylon the Great focusing on multiple wives while we in captivity. We need to be focused on Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments, and how to govern ourselves to be in the right spirit so we can get redeemed before Yahweh brings the judgment to the earth. Okay? So this is the purpose of having that new heart and new mind according to Yahweh's righteousness the right way. But again, the marriage laws pertaining to having more than one wife pertain to when the Hebrew Israelites were no longer in captivity. Okay? Let's go to the next slide. It says standard leadership qualities for all men of Israel. So this is the standard leadership qualities for all Hebrew Israelite men. Okay, this is the standard. So we're going to go to the book of 1 Timothy chapter 3 verse 2. And this is Apostle Paul who wrote this to a brother named Timothy. Right? Because we do know Apostle Paul was rolling with the right type of spirit according to Yahshua Mashiach's understanding. Okay, because Paul was in the right spirit of Christ. Okay, Apostle Paul was in the right spirit of Yahshua Mashiach. Point blank, period. It says 1 Timothy chapter 3 verse 2. It says a bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, vigilant, sober, of good behavior, given to hospitality, apt to teach. You see this, Israel? You see this? It says the standard leadership qualities for all men of Israel would be a bishop or a man of leadership quality must be blameless, the husband of one wife. So it says the husband of one wife. Notice Apostle Paul did not tell Timothy, hey, go tell the men of leadership, just get multiple wives or have more than one wife. He didn't tell the men of leadership to do that. Okay, he commanded the men to have one wife. Okay, it says to be vigilant, sober, of good behavior, given to hospitality, and apt to teach. The reason why Apostle Paul says a bishop then must be blameless is because a bishop is supposed to be the leader, right, of a certain church or a certain camp or a certain group of people, right? The leadership qualities is supposed to mimic righteousness. Okay, so if Apostle Paul told Timothy, hey, go get multiple wives, what type of lighting will be on those men of leadership of this time. They'll look like they were wicked, right? Because they'll look like they're player players, right? The men of leadership look like they player players, like pimps, right? Or just having random women. But by having one wife, it creates the aura of righteousness, because society knows having a wife is standard of understanding. Okay, you don't come off as if like you're a Hugh Hefner. You don't come off like you're Bishop Don Juan. Okay, because people have to see you in the light. So when the people see a bishop or a leader amongst the community and they see a man respectful to having one wife and then he takes care of his children, he is looked upon as high regard. But when society looks at a man with a bunch of women in today's time or throughout history, they're going to look at this individual as not a righteous man, right? They're going to look at this man as if he's using these women, or he just having sex with these women. He's not operating in the right light of understanding. So that's what society is going to view of this particular man that's just taking on all these women. So Apostle Paul wanted the men of leadership of his time to be focused on having one wife. Okay, and this is what Yahshua Mashiach wanted Apostle Paul to teach those other churches in those Greek cities. Okay. So now we got to understanding that it is a standard of leadership qualities for all men of Israel, right, to have one wife. Okay, point blank, period. So now we go to the next slide. It says permissible for another wife in emergency situation while in captivity. So this is the permissible understanding for another wife in emergency situation. Okay, in emergency situation while in captivity. Okay, so this is pertaining to an emergency situation. Okay, it says if a wife of the husband is not able to bear children at all. So it's basically an open door for another wife to be implemented when a wife of the husband is not able to bear children at all. Okay. Next point, it says if a wife, due to health related reasons, cannot conceive a child, because we do have cases where women have health reasons that's going on where they cannot conceive a child. Okay. And it says if a wife is too old to bear children, because we have some Hebrew couples that get married, but again, the Hebrew women of older age are too old to bear children. Okay, they pass the age of understanding to have a child. Okay, this is going to the understanding that women who got old in age and did not have any children at all. Okay, so this is when that door can be open for a man to have a second wife based upon those circumstances. Okay, it says the husband has to be proven and studied in the Hebrew truth for years to have knowledge on Yahweh's laws, to have a second wife based on emergency circumstances. And then it says based upon a wife not able to have children at all. So a man that is going to have another wife, right? He has to be studied in the scriptures. He has to know Yahweh's laws, statutes, and commandments. And also it has to be proven of his works that he's justified on having another wife. And based upon his wife not even able to conceive or have a child at all. Okay. And basically I'm going to explain why it's permissible for a man to have another wife based upon that particular woman not being able to bear a child at all. Okay, I'm going to explain why, according to Yahweh's laws, why it's permissible for a man to have another wife while in captivity based upon emergency circumstances. Okay, and I explain this understanding right here in the different points right here. When another wife is permissible, but notice I didn't put multiple wives is permissible while in captivity. Notice why I did not say multiple wives is permissible in emergency situations while in captivity. I didn't say multiple. I just said another wife. So that's just 2 wives. Okay? I'm explaining that 2 wives is permissible. I never said multiple wives is permissible while in captivity. Because we have Hebrew Israelites out there pushing doctrines out there, and they are saying that it's justified by the laws of Moses for men of today's time to have multiple wives. But according to the law, it is not so. Because why? The children of Israel are still in captivity. But under emergency circumstances, a second wife is permissible only on emergency basis of this understanding, which we brought out earlier. Okay. And I'm going to explain why in this next slide right here, why having a second wife based upon emergency circumstances is permissible. Okay. When you're dealing with childbearing. Okay, because it's going to link in with Yahweh's laws from the beginning when we go back to the book of Genesis understanding. Okay, it says the beginning law for mankind. So this is the law for mankind. Genesis chapter 1 verse 28. Okay, this is the book of Genesis chapter 1 verse 28. And it says, and of course in general, the person who wrote the book of Genesis was Moses. Okay, Genesis chapter 1 verse 28. And Elohim blessed them. And Elohim said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. So you see this, Israel? So again, it was a commandment for mankind, right? It was a commandment order to be delivered to mankind to have the understanding they were supposed to be fruitful and multiply, right? So if you have a woman that's not able to have children, you cannot fulfill the beginning law of mankind. Okay? You cannot fulfill the law of the beginning law for mankind based upon a woman not being able to conceive. So this is why that door is open when we go back to the understanding of permissible for another wife in emergency situation while in captivity. This is why it's permissible for a man to have another wife based upon that first wife not being able to be fruitful and multiply. Okay? So that is the only applicable understanding that we can do under captivity circumstances when we can have another wife in the scenario. Okay, when a Hebrew man can get another wife based upon an emergency situation of his first wife not being able to have children at all. Okay, that's the point I'm proving. So if you go back to the beginning law for mankind, it was a commandment given to the people to be fruitful and multiply. Okay, so the Bible doesn't contradict itself. So if this woman not able to bear children, this man can be able to now get a second wife so he can have children to pass down inheritance and legacy. Okay? That was the purpose of a male and female coming together to pass down inheritance to the children or legacy down to the children. So it can keep that man who is the husband, family line going down the road. Okay, because if his woman cannot bear children, that means his bloodline is going to have a stopping point, because if he's dead, he has nobody else from his bloodline to continue his inheritance or his legacy. So he will have to get a second wife to produce a child, because his first wife is not able to bear children. Okay, to pass down his bloodline and basically his inheritance or legacy down the road. Okay, so it can be an ongoing generational of inheritance. Okay, so that's why Yahweh says the beginning law for mankind. Okay, to be fruitful and multiply, to keep the generational line going. And this is why I said it's permissible for another wife in an emergency situation while in captivity for a man to get a second wife only on an emergency basis. So if you see Hebrew Israelites just picking random women out there and just popping out babies with these women. They're going off. They in the midst of sin. They are battling with lust. Okay? Point blank period. Okay, so now this is when we're going to get the understanding of having the righteous marriage order in the kingdom analogy. When men of Israel are going to have more than one wife theoretically. Okay? This is the book of Isaiah chapter 4 verse 1. This is prophecy. This is going into the prophecy concerning when the Hebrew Israelites are in rulership. They are the reigning superpower on earth. They are being ruled over by the black Messiah when he established his kingdom on earth. The Hebrew Israelites are in a rulership position at this point in time when this multiple wives analogy is going to be applicable when they are in that new kingdom on earth under Christ's reign. Okay? Isaiah chapter 4 verse 1. It says, "And in that day 7 women shall take hold of one man, saying, We will eat our own bread and wear our own apparel. Only let us be called by thy name, to take away our reproach." So you see that? You see that, Israel? We will eat our own bread and wear our own apparel. Only let us be called by thy name, to take away our reproach. So you see this, Israel? You see this? It says, and in that day 7 women shall take hold of one man. So, and in that day, that's talking about when the kingdom of heaven is established on earth under the black Messiah's reign on earth. This is when the Hebrew Israelites are going to be in rulership. This is when those men of Israel are going to be able to have multiple wives. Okay? And notice the understanding of the Hebrew women of this time. Notice the understanding that they're going to have. This is the mindset of the Hebrew women in the future. They're going to have this understanding. We will eat our own bread, meaning the Hebrew men of this time are not going to have to worry about whining and dining a female, right? The Hebrew women of this time, they're not going to be catered to, oh, a man got to take me out in all these expensive restaurants for me to be interested in them. This is the mindset of modern women. But the mindset of the Hebrew women in the future, they're going to have a mindset of being a helpmate.
So,
ever since I was born, I've been trained to serve you.
Okay, the modern women of today are not designed or programmed to be a helpmate unto the man. They are in the mindset of a man doing all the work. And the women are just coming along for the ride. That's the modern philosophy of the women of today. But in the future, in that new Jerusalem and in that new land called Israel, understanding when it's set up to be established under righteousness, under Yahweh's righteousness of understanding, guess what? The women are not going to be concerned about being wine and dine. And it says, and wear our own apparel. The women are not going to be concerned about a man have to go take a woman shopping like that. Right? That's not their interest, because they're making it known that in the kingdom of heaven, they'll better get their own clothing. They'll better cook their own food. They'll better have servants and handmaids to get their food prepared for them. They're going to be able to do their own bidding when it comes to getting their own food prepared, when it pertains to getting their own clothing. they're going to be able to handle that themselves. Notice what the Hebrew women in the future concern is. It says, only let us be called by thy name. The Hebrew women in the future are only going to be concerned on taking on a particular man's name. Meaning they want to be known as wife of such and such. They want to be known as wife as Hezekiah or wife as Jonah. They want to be known as wife of Zephaniah. They want to be known as being wife of Saul. The Hebrew women want to take on the names of these men who they want these men to take them as wives. Okay? They're concerned about marriage. The Hebrew women in the future in the kingdom of heaven that's going to be established on earth, they're going to be focused on marriage. They're not going to be focusing on just getting to the bag, making it rain, and all this other bull crap and twerking on the cameras like these modern women are doing. They're not going to be with this type of vibration. They're not going to be in the vibration of feminism where they're saying they don't need a man. In today's time, a lot of women are saying they don't need a man. But in this day, they're going to need a man. They say, hey, we will eat our own bread. You don't have to worry about whining and dining us. And also it says, and wear our own apparel. They're telling the Hebrew man, we going to buy our own clothes. We can handle that ourselves. You don't need to buy us our own clothes. We going to take care of that ourselves. Only let us be called by the name. The Hebrew women in the future are only going to be focused on being married to a Hebrew man. That's their focus. Okay? So this is a type of different spirit than the modern women of today. The spirit of the Hebrew women in the future are going to be catered to being married to a Hebrew man. To take away our approach. So again, it's not going to be a good thing for women to be single in the kingdom like that. It was considered in ancient times for a woman, if she was single, for a long period of time, it was considered not a good thing, right? But in today's time, they congratulate women that are single, right? They congratulate women that are not married. But in the future, women are going to want to be married in the kingdom that's going to be established on earth in Christ's reign understanding. The women going to be thankful to be married. They're going to be seeking to be married. But in today's time, these Hebrew women of today are not focusing on marriage. They're focusing on living their best life. They're focusing on getting to the money. They're focusing on using brothers, setting brothers up to get killed. They're focusing on worshiping in their religions. That's what the Hebrew women of today are doing. But the Hebrew women in Christ's kingdom, right, that's going to be established on earth in Israel, the Hebrew women are going to be focused on Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments. The Hebrew women are going to be focusing on being a helpmate unto the man. The Hebrew women are going to be focusing on building families. They're going to be building towards making sure their husband is taken care of. They're going to be an asset unto the man. Point blank, period. Okay, they're going to be rolling with a different type of spirit. Just look at this example with Eddie Murphy Coming to America example. This is what the women are going to be like.
May I talk to you alone for a moment, please?
Excuse us.
For a moment.
So,
Ever since I was born, I've been trained to serve you.
Yes, I know this, but I would like to know about you. What do you like to do?
Whatever you like.
What kind of music do you like?
Whatever kind of music you like.
Look, I know what I like. And I know you know what I like because you were trained to know what I like. But I would like to know what you like. For instance, do you have a favorite food?
Yes?
Good! What is your favorite food?
Whatever food you like.
Are you saying that no matter what I tell you to do, you will do?
Yes, Your Highness.
Anything I say, you do?
Yes, Your Highness.
Okay, you see that, Israel? The women have a different type of spirit, right? This woman in this particular movie with Eddie Murphy, she had a different type of spirit. See, women of today would laugh at that type of woman, right? But this is going to be the standard in the kingdom of heaven. Okay, this is going to be the standard role of a woman in the kingdom of heaven on earth. And I'm going to prove that a woman is going to be catered to a man. Okay, a Hebrew woman in the future is going to be catered and her interest is going to be towards her husband. Point blank, period. Okay, I'm going to show the analogy that the Hebrew women in the future are going to be focusing on that husband only. Okay, they're not going to be focusing on sleeping around all over the place and then just popping out babies, being baby mamas. No, the Hebrew women in the kingdom of heaven are going to be wives to one husband. Okay. Now we go to this next slide. It says, no marrying the Gentile nations in the kingdom, right? The reason why I titled this no marrying the Gentile nations in the kingdom is because you have Hebrew Israelites that are forming doctrine that's telling people that the Hebrew men are going to have the concubines of the Gentile nations. No, that is totally off. The Gentiles are not going to be married to the Hebrew Israelites. That's a no. Because in general, when you go to the law in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 7 verse 3, it says, neither shalt thou make marriages with them. Thy daughter thou shalt not give unto his son, nor his daughter shalt thou take unto thy son. So this was a law catered towards the Hebrew men not to marry the Gentile nations women. Okay, so again, the Hebrew men are not going to marry the Gentile nations women, because this is what the law told the Hebrew men not to do. The Hebrew men are commanded not to marry the Gentile nation women. Point blank, period. Okay? So it's not going to be no marrying the Gentile nations in the kingdom. It's not going to be no making the Gentile nations women our concubines. That's not going to go down in no kingdom. Okay? So if anybody or any Hebrew Israelite is teaching that the Hebrew men are going to be marrying concubines of the Gentile nations, they going off. They need to repent. Okay? Because that contradicts what Deuteronomy chapter 7 verse 3 says. Okay? Because in Christ's kingdom, it's going to be Yahweh's laws pushed in full effect. Point blank, period. This is the understanding that I was trying to bring out earlier when I was explaining that the Hebrew women are going to be catered to the liking of a Hebrew man. Their interest is going to be all about the Hebrew man. The Hebrew women interest is going to be saving themselves as a virgin to a Hebrew man. They're not focusing on just sleeping around like they're doing today. These women are going to have a new frame of mind of understanding to be focused on being with one man only. Okay? This is righteous marriage order in the kingdom again. This is Isaiah chapter 62 verse 5. This is a future prophecy spoken by the prophet Isaiah. Okay? Isaiah chapter 62 verse 5. For as a young man marrieth a virgin, so shall thy sons marry thee. And as the bridegroom rejoiceth over the bride, so shall thy Elohim rejoice over thee. You see this, Israel? It says, for as a young man marrieth a virgin, so shall thy sons marry thee. And as the bridegroom rejoiceth over the bride, so shall thy Elohim rejoice over thee. So you see this, Israel? So the Hebrew men are going to be able to get married in their youth, right? Because if you fast forward up to the daytime, you have Hebrew men out here that's single out here because they can't find a wife. It's difficult to find a righteous woman of today's time. So a lot of older men are preferring to being single, right? A lot of Hebrew men are preferring to be single and mostly just focus on the word. Okay, but in this day, it's going to be easy to find a wife. The wife that the Hebrew men are going to be choosing, they're going to be virgins. That's why it says, for as a young man, marry a virgin, because a young man is going to be able to marry a virgin. Okay, a woman that has not been dealing with other men. A man is going to be able to marry a woman only for him. Okay, so shall thy sons marry thee, and as the bridegroom rejoices over the bride, because now the men are going to be happy, the women are going to be happy that they are married to a particular man of righteousness. It's going to be a righteous marriage ceremony going on. It's going to be a righteous agreement for this particular couple to come together. Okay, or this particular man marrying, of course, his other wives, but it's going to be in order according to Yahweh's righteousness. So shall thy Elohim rejoice over thee, because Yahweh is the one that's setting this establishment up for the men of Israel to marry virgins. Because in the kingdom in America, and also these Gentile kingdoms throughout the earth, men are not primarily marrying virgins out here. Why? Because you're living in a corruptible world. Okay? The women mindset is basically destroyed. Because when you marry a woman, she is supposed to be a virgin. She's not supposed to be dealing with or had sexual relations with all these men out here. And then now you can marry her. That's backwards. Right? That's backwards. The men of Israel are supposed to be marrying virgins. So anybody that's supposed to be getting married to a woman, she's supposed to be a virgin. Technically, according to the law. Okay? But we do understand we've been in captivity. We've been dispersed amongst the nations. So a lot of our women have been destroyed for lack of knowledge, and they had been dealing with the wrong type of men in their life and got psychologically damaged. So they don't have the understanding of what marriage is according to the Bible. They're not living according to what this Bible is saying, because this Bible has not been promoted to the people correctly. Okay? But in this day, in Isaiah chapter 62 verse 5, the Hebrew women are going to be in righteousness. The Hebrew women are going to be virgins married to a husband. Okay? They're not going to be focusing on marrying just random men out here. They're going to be marrying men of understanding. Okay? According to Yahweh's righteousness. Point blank, period. And that's why you look at this picture, this brother is happy, right? He's rejoicing. He's happy he got more than one wife because he's in righteous understanding. He can afford to take care of these women. And these women are there for this man because why? They understand their role. They understand their place. Okay, these women are not the American mindset women in this particular picture right here. This particular picture this is how the Hebrew women are supposed to be acting in their femininity. Catering to the liking towards a man. They're supposed to be catering towards making sure their husband is taken care of. Point blank, period. Okay, so it says the kingdom of heaven on earth. In the next slide, it says 1 Corinthians chapter 15 verse 50. It says, now this I say, brethren, that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of Elohim, neither doeth corruption inherit incorruption. So you see this, Israel? It says 1 Corinthians chapter 15 verse 50 again. It says, now this I say, brethren, that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of Elohim, neither doeth corruption inherit incorruption. So again, to inherit the kingdom of heaven on earth, the Hebrew Israelite men and women will have to be what? Immortal. Okay, they have to have immortal bodies. Okay, because right now, us as Hebrew Israelites, we have corruptible bodies. But when we inherit the kingdom of heaven on earth analogy, we're going to have incorruptible bodies, which is going into immortality bodies. Okay, so this is what we're going to have. We're going to have righteous bodies in the kingdom of heaven on earth understanding. Okay, so this is what Apostle Paul is telling our people that's being referred to as being the Corinthians. Okay, he's explaining that your mortal bodies that you have now is not going to be able to inherit the kingdom. So you're going to have incorruptible bodies or immortal bodies to inherit that new kingdom that's going to be established on earth in Israel. Okay, because again, the kingdom of heaven understanding is going to be here on earth. Okay, because we have Christian churches teaching people when you die to get to kingdom, you're going to be in the heaven in the sky. Okay, this is the doctrines of Christianity. That's a lie. You're going to be here on earth in Christ's rulership understanding when he's setting up his kingdom on earth understanding. Okay, this is that kingdom of heaven understanding on earth, okay, that the children of Israel are going to inherit, which is going to be taking place with men, women, and children are going to inherit that new Jerusalem understanding. They're going to inherit the Holy Land of Israel. Okay, the ones that hearken to the words of Yahweh's righteousness. Okay, so we're going to read this law again. It says, again, righteous marriage order in the kingdom. Okay, it says Exodus chapter 21, verse 10. It says, if he take him another wife, her food, her raiment, and her duty of marriage shall he not diminish. Because in the kingdom of heaven understanding, the Hebrew man is going to be in rulership. Okay, the Hebrew man is going to be in rulership. So he's not going to have a problem with providing. Okay, he's not going to be no longer in captivity. Okay, so this is when the additional wife can take place, when we are in that kingdom of heaven on earth understanding. Okay, so this is why I had to read this law again. And again, this law was given when the children of Israel were no longer under captivity. They was in the wilderness. They was free. They was out of bondage. But in this day, this law is going to be basically being fulfilled in the kingdom of heaven that's going to be established on earth. Okay, when the man is going to be able to, freely take on another wife or other wives. Okay, because this is the inheritance that Yahweh is giving to the men of Israel. This is the reward of the Hebrew brothers that hearken unto Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments. Because in general, in today's time, the modern women of today are in the powerhouse position where they can deal with multiple men, right? When that is going off, that's sinful lifestyle. But in general, in society today, that's what women are doing. Women in general are in their heaven right now, right? Because they can deal with multiple men who are technically their husbands. Right? Yahweh's going to have a trading places analogy. So the difference is the men of Israel are going to be in righteousness. They're going to be able to get multiple wives in righteousness. But the women, they're picking their multiple husbands in sin. There's a difference, right? There's a difference in understanding. But Yahweh is going to have the Hebrew man picking righteous women in the kingdom of heaven, right? And they're going to have multiple wives in the kingdom of heaven. This is a kingdom of heaven understanding when the multiple wives is permissible. Because like I said, we have Hebrew men of today's time and modern day times, while they're in captivity, They're pushing the notion of having more than one wife. They're pushing the notion to have multiple wives. Just freely just grabbing women and making them their wife. That's going off. Okay, so if you Hebrew Israelite of leadership, if you're doing that, you're going off. You in sin. You did not have full understanding of Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments on what is permissible and what is not permissible under the laws of the Most High. Okay, that means you in error in your understanding. So going forward, you Hebrew Israelites, you don't need to be teaching that you could just have multiple wives while you're living in captivity. You don't need to be still teaching that doctrine. That doctrine is going off. Okay, you need to be teaching men and women to be married and a man to have one wife. Only put out there that if your woman is not able to bear children, another wife is permissible under certain circumstances. Okay, if she never had children at all, or if that man does not have children at all. Okay, in general. Because certain women, they're not able to have children at all. Okay, so to pass down legacy, you have to do things in order. Okay, so that's why I'm saying that's the only thing that is permissible. Okay, if a man, he marries a woman, she's not able to bear children. Okay, that's the only thing is permissible by that understanding of a man taking on another wife. Okay. Okay, so it says the next slide. It says righteous marriage order in the kingdom again. Deuteronomy chapter 21, verse 15. It says, if a man have two wives, one beloved and another one hated, and another hated, and they have borne him children, both the beloved and the hated, and if the firstborn son be hers that was hated. So we're not going to read the rest of this particular law, but it's just pertaining to men that have more than one wife. So it is lawful for a man to have more than one wife understanding. So that's why I said it's lawful for a man to have multiple wives, but just not in captivity. Okay, but in captivity, we do understand emergency circumstances have to occur. But this is just going to understanding that this Hebrew man cannot discriminate against one of his wives that he does not really like that. And if he has a child by the woman that he really doesn't like that, he cannot, bypass that child inheritance based upon not liking that wife that he has no interest in. Because you will have most cases where brothers have more liking towards another wife, and they'd be like, well, I'm going to give the inheritance to the wife that I really like over the other one that buried my first child, because the inheritance or legacy was passed down through the firstborn child. Okay, so that's the understanding that Moses was implementing, explaining that you cannot bypass the firstborn child's inheritance. Okay, you have to give the inheritance to the firstborn child based upon certain circumstances. It has to be passed theoretically through the firstborn child. Okay, but we do understand if certain other reasons occur. But he was just establishing you can't discriminate against one wife for the other wife based upon the inheritance of that child. That's what he was just establishing. Okay, but again, as you can see, this is just a picture of a man sitting on a chair in his home when he has more than one wife. Again, this is when the Hebrew Israelite men and women are going to have those immortal bodies. Okay, so this is the kingdom of heaven understanding when this law is theoretically going to be pushed in Israel understanding. Okay, and again, righteous marriage order in the kingdom, Isaiah chapter 4 verse 1. It says, and in that day 7 women shall take hold of one man, saying, we will eat our own bread and wear our own apparel. Only let us be called by thy name, to take away our reproach. So again, and in that day 7 women shall take hold of one man. Okay, so this is a future prophecy. This is not talking about now. So if you Hebrew Israelites are taking on 7, 8, 10 different women in today's time, you're going off. You're in the midst of sin. Okay, you are in the midst of sin and you need to repent. because that's not the standard of Yahweh's righteousness while in captivity. Okay, this is talking about when we in the kingdom of heaven, when we're going to have more than one wife freely. We're going to have up to 7. We're going to may have 8 or 9 or 10 or 11. Okay, we're going to have a big number of wives in the kingdom of heaven on earth, because you're going to be able to afford to take care of these women. These women are going to have a new frame of mind, because the modern day Hebrew Israelites that are married to these multiple women, a lot of these women leave them. A lot of these women leave these Hebrew men and go off and deal with another man. Or a lot of these women that these men claim that that's their wives, a lot of these Hebrew women be putting these men on child support. Right? Because these men are not in rulership. They're not in leadership. There's no government set up for the Hebrew man to establish order in the midst of Israel, understanding. So a lot of the Hebrew Israelite leadership, they're just putting out doctrines out there off the basis of lust. Okay, but in Christ's kingdom, there's going to be law and order. There's going to be a government set in place to establish order on the marriage scenario when it pertains to these multiple wives being established. Men are just not going to just be picking random women out here just on the basis of lust, because the Hebrew man going to be picking women according to Yahweh's righteousness, so they can be able to have more than one wife in that new kingdom in Israel. Okay, understanding. Okay, Israel. So hopefully, Israel, you enjoyed this class lesson on Kingdom Builders of Israel LLC YouTube channel, to give the understanding of the proper understanding when the multiple wives analogy is going to be permissible. And also, we broke down understanding that we have Hebrew Israelites that's battling lust and sin and actually putting themselves out there to have multiple wives of today's time, which is going off. Because you look at this particular video right here of this particular man right here having multiple wives, he doesn't have money. He doesn't have money like that. That's why the kitchen is real small. That's why everything look like it's crammed up. He doesn't have servants and handmaids because he's not in a rulership position. Okay, and he's struggling. So yeah, Israel, we're not supposed to be doing this type of activity. So other than that, Israel, stay tuned, Israel, for more videos on Kingdom Builders Israel LLC YouTube channel. And like I said, our people need to repent, to get the right understanding on what we're supposed to be doing. Okay, so going forward, the doctrine need to be a man need to have one wife. Okay, theoretically, that needs to be the doctrine that needs to be pushed. And also, only on emergency cases, men can have a second wife, only on emergency circumstances. Okay, which we already established earlier what those emergency circumstances were. Right now, we need to be focused on learning Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments. Of course, before World War III starts. And like I say, we living in the last days, Israel, of the Gentile nations rulership. So other than that, Israel, support this truth, spread this knowledge. And like I said, please do not operate in this spirit right here, like you see in this example, in this particular video right here that we're going to show. This is not the spirit that we need to be operating in, desiring to have multiple wives now. Okay, we need to be desiring to have the understanding of Yahweh's righteousness according to his holy Bible. Okay, according to as it is written. And we do know, just like this verse says in Isaiah chapter 4 verse 1, and in that day 7 women shall take hold of one man. So that is a future prophecy event that's going to go down on earth for the Hebrew man to have more than one wife freely like that. Okay, but that's not right now, because the children of Israel are still in captivity under the Gentile nations. And just let this be known, you Hebrew Israelites, share this video amongst your peers to let them know, hey, y'all need to come out there understanding or pushing that same doctrine. Okay, that it's okay to have multiple wives. Okay, that's a wrong doctrine. Okay. Other than that, Israel, we need to be pushing us as Hebrew men to be husband to one wife theoretically. Okay, that needs to be the standard doctrine to be pushed to our men, so they can have the right frame of mind and come out that lustful spirit of desiring multiple wives while in captivity. Okay, Israel. So other than that, Israel, stay tuned for more videos on Kingdom Builders of Israel LLC YouTube channel. Shalom.
what's going on, y'all. You know, hey, you see the unit in the kitchen. I got my wives working together right here. I got my wife Ruth right here helping the children. Say hey. I got Zion. Say what's up, Zion. What's up? I got my wife Sarah. Say hey, Sarah. Hey, where Bathsheba at? My wife Bathsheba. Hello. What about Susanna? Hey, say hey. Hello. And he go my newly wife right there. Hey, Don. Don, say hello. Hello. There go my wife Don right there. Hey, there go my big girl Grace. Say hey, Grace. We getting it ready for the children. We about to feed the children. Say what's up, Isaac. That's my boy Isaac. That's Obed. Say hey. There go Samson. Say what's up. Look at Samson. There go my girl Rachel. Say hey. There go my girl Becca. Say hey, Becca. That's my baby. There go my big girl. She been out there playing, so she's sweating. That's Miriam. Then we even got my baby girl Leah right there. Say hey, baby girl. So look, just showing you, we can work in unity. These women ain't in no competition, man. We building a legacy, man.
Fatality. Well done. Outstanding. Impressive. Excellent.